Yeah, remember how I put this out almost a month ago and I said that I would get a video out pretty quickly? Yeah. So another edition of Let's Discuss. Yeah, this is where I reach out to you guys either through social media or reading some of your comments that you've left on my videos in terms of hot takes, real talks, unpopular opinions, or just spicy opinions, things like that, and I discuss about them here. So yes, I do know that I completely ripped this off from the melon. Within this type of a climate, it's share and share alike, so let's dive in. Defining the real yes doesn't matter. It's pointless to argue about which group of musicians did it best and when yes stopped being yes. Yeah, I see your point. Yes, as well as a lot of those other big progressive rock bands like King Crimson and all that. It's hard to kind of put your finger on what is definitively the band. I know this is kind of what John Anderson was kind of saying back in the day of like, yes isn't necessarily a group of musicians, but an idea of music. And in some respects, I kind of agree to that, but I also will say that it's hard to be yes when you only have like one or two of the like standout members. You can't even say founding members, because the yes that's going touring around right now with Alan White and Steve Howe, none of them were in the original band when they started off. I think the only one that's really left that's playing consistently is John Anderson, and that's with the yes that's being John Anderson, Rick Wakeman, and Rabin there. I do see what you're saying of like, what's the point of really saying what is the definitive yes? Because with each album that they put out, it was a completely different entity. It is a fun thing to kind of thought experiment of like what was the definitive yes, but I also recognize that it is a futile thought experiment, because I will agree with John Anderson in that yes, even though it is a band, because there's been so many of them, it does kind of transcend the musical musicians and does become more of an ideology of what music should be. Kind of like what King Crimson does. Notes Reviews is the best music reviews channel. Thanks! I don't actually agree with this, but thank you. I will say that I'm the second best progressive rock leaning reviewer on YouTube. Harsh vocals are not a thing that need to exist. Granted, they're awesome music like Opeth, Cynic, and Meshuggah, but that's great in spite of the growls, screaming, pig squeals, etc. Never because of it. This is another one that I'm going to have to actually disagree with. In terms of brutality, sometimes those really guttural screams, growls, pig squeals, as you mentioned, are needed. One that comes to mind explicitly is Between the Buried and Me's prequel to a sequel. When you have that really big build-up and you have that screaming at that end where, you know, it's all the branches that are getting stripped away from this monstrous creature, that is definitely needed to punctuate it. With me, with death growls and screams and all that, I don't like when a band only uses those, and I think that's where your point is coming from, when a band only uses those. Rob Scallion, I believe, did a video a couple weeks ago where it doesn't take a lot of talent to scream or growl for those tech metal things, but I do feel like there's a place in music for those growls and those death screams when used properly. TesseracT and Between the Buried and Me are the Nickelback of Prog Metal. Their music is incredibly boring and uninspired. How they have such a following is a mystery to me. Maybe listen to Colors from Between the Buried and Me. It is just a technical masterpiece in that sense. The stretches of music, their command of dueling guitars is amazing, and I mean the drumming on that is just brilliant. And TesseracT's ability to blend a melodic feel within kind of like a gentcore is a really like a masterful work. Now granted, their last album was a little bit of a disappointment, but just with Polaris and their first two albums, a really great utilization of their kind of skill work. It's not really all that of mystery to me. I love them. I've seen them live many a times, and yeah, there's a reason why they're that popular. Let's be honest, Kevin Moore was better for Dream Theater than Rudess. He is a superior writer. Example, Space Tide Vest, 6 O'Clock, and Pull Me Under. I'm on the fence with this one. I do recognize that Kevin Moore was probably, as you say, a better fit for Dream Theater in terms of the songwriting, in terms of providing padding with them. I will admit that probably on a technical side, Rudis is the better musician, but I also do realize that Rudis does noodle away quite a bit, and we already have a lot of noodling with Petrucci. In terms of playing style, I feel like Rudis is able to kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with Petrucci, and in some ways that advances the music. Like, that's how we got such great works such as Metropolis Part 2 and Octavarium. But I also recognize that the songwriting ship, Moore has Rudis beat hand over fist. But I think Rudis also recognizes that. Like, he knows that he's not necessarily there to write the music and the lyrics and, you know, all that type of things. He's there to provide amazing soundscapes on the keyboards. I just wish that there was more substance to his noodling that isn't quite felt. Like, he doesn't quite land the notes as hard as Moore did way back in the day. But I think it also comes down to preference. I do not like it when a band adds additional tracks on a remastered album. It feels like it ruins the flow of an album, especially when there is demos. Yeah, I actually agree to this one. This is one of my big pet peeves. If you're going to remaster an album and have additional tracks on it because a CD can add more than an LP, put it on a second disc. I don't mind spending a little bit more money if it means it's going to be on a second disc. Nothing bugs me more than having to literally stop an album or like put in a silent track, like maybe that's a minute long, to really emphasize the end of an album. A lot of my remastered and reissued albums have these demo tracks, or like my Brain Salad Surgery and Thick as a Brick end with like an interview with the band, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this on a track like this. Like, it totally ruins the enjoyment and the flow of it. So I 100% agree with this. All your favorite singers groups are overrated. Just because you think they're awesome does not mean they are. There is someone out there that hates them and thinks they're the worst thing ever, and vice versa. Now, this one's actually provided by one of my best friends, and we've had a discussion over this. And I'm actually going to have to disagree with this, and I know I'm going to hear about this later on because I'm sure she'll be watching this. And there's a couple of reasons why I disagree with this statement. I know what you're trying to get at, and I think the underlying message you're trying to get across is that music is all subjective, and everybody enjoys music differently. In the fact that, you know, my favorite group might be completely different from your favorite group. The group that I hate, you might love, and in that sense, what I think is the best, you might think is overrated, and vice versa. But the way that it is presented here, I'm just going to talk about it on face value in that sense. I don't believe that somebody hating another group undervalues that group's accomplishments and that group's achievements and my own enjoyment of them. When somebody says that something is overrated, usually they're saying that the artist or the songs or the band themselves either didn't earn their popularity properly, they didn't they can't understand why they're so popular in that sense. And to paint a better picture of this, think about this in the terms of saying, like, all food, if we were to kind of just look outside of music, all food is overrated. And that really can't be said. Like, if somebody said that pizza is overrated just because a select few people don't like pizza, pizza isn't overrated. And in that sense, a lot of bands that, you know, have kind of reached the status of claim to fames, right? Like, we're looking at like super groups at this point, like almost the Untouchable Pantheon, like the Beatles, like Nirvana, like even those bands that I've covered, like Radiohead and Pink Floyd, those bands that you can't necessarily discredit for being who they are. And in that sense, like, even I, who doesn't necessarily appreciate bands or artists such as like Tupac, for example, or Kendrick Lamar, or you know, like Rihanna, like, these are artists that I don't listen to because I don't connect with them, but I would never say that they're overrated, even though I don't particularly get anything out of their music. And I don't see how, if I were to be of the opinion that they are overrated, automatically makes them overrated. So to kind of have a blanketed statement by saying all your favorite singers and groups are overrated, I mean, part of that is definitely a troll, and definitely that is baiting the community and the fan bases. And I mean, we're not even looking at the toxic fans of bands such as like Tool or like Metallica, but even those bands that people could say are overrated, even those individuals that are claiming that they're overrated do need to take a step back and realize the influences those bands have had over the musical landscape. Again, I understand what you're trying to say with this, but overall, I can't agree with what you are bringing forward. I do agree that music is completely subjective, but by putting forward in this kind of a manner, I think your message is getting undercut with the syntax that you're presenting. And so, yeah, that's about it. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to dust myself off after so many hot takes and whatnot. Leave some more by commenting down below. Hopefully, it won't take me up to 2 months to create the next one. Instead of doing this whole let's discuss shout out like I did on Twitter, I might just pull from past albums, and this way I don't have like this looming timeline behind me to try to push myself forward. So, yeah, so leave your own hot takes, your own unpopular opinions, your own real talks by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.